We're unpacking a massive, high-tech expansion of the U.S. government surveillance capabilities. Originally, this system was aimed at immigration enforcement, but, well, it's quietly grown into something far more sweeping. It's using state-of-the-art tools to scoop up the personal data of hundreds of millions of everyday citizens. It's a complex, multi-million-dollar operation, and we're going to look closely at exactly how the whole shebang works.
Imagine stepping out of your house in Maine, right? You're just starting your day, only to find federal agents suddenly boxing in your car with their vehicles, completely blocking your driveway. Then, an agent looks at you and delivers this chilling message. "This is a warning. We know you live right here."
No way. That isn't a scene out of some Hollywood thriller. That's a documented reality that happened to a woman named Liz McClellan. She had spent the morning lawfully observing and taking photographs of federal agents conducting an immigration arrest in her community. And in response to her acting as an observer, those agents tracked her straight back to her home to deliver that warning.
Section 1. Building the Digital Dragnet. Scaling up the surveillance state.
Because what happened to Liz in that driveway, that wasn't just some isolated incident. It's part of a newly expanded, deeply systemic domestic surveillance architecture. Just look at the sheer scale of this. 300 million. That is the staggering number of people whose personal data is currently sitting in a vast trove, accessible to thousands of federal agents right now across the country. To put that into perspective, that is almost the entire population of the United States.
And this brilliantly illustrates the staggering financial momentum behind the system. With the backing of Congress and the President, the Department of Homeland Security spent a record $425 million on surveillance tech in just the past year alone. That represents a 17% increase from the prior year, and it is on pace to set yet another record by 2026.
So what exactly is all this money buying? We're looking at what's known as a digital dragnet. By definition, this is a newly expanded domestic surveillance system built specifically to locate, track, and deport people by sifting through massive amounts of both public and private information. It operates almost like a relentless digital detective working tirelessly in the background, making connections that no human ever could.
Now, you might be asking, why does this matter to you? Well, take a look at the specific data points being scraped and packaged. Agents have easy access to home and workplace addresses, social media accounts across various platforms, vehicle information and license plates, flight history, travel logs, and incredibly, even encrypted messaging data from apps like WhatsApp. This is literally an unprecedented linking of government records with far-reaching commercial databases.
Section 2. The Corporate Tech Contractors. Billion-dollar partnerships.
The government didn't build this entire dragnet completely internally. They're relying heavily on the private sector, turning to major corporate machinery to make all of this possible. You have Palantir, securing an $81.3 million contract largely to provide an app called Elite for linking data streams. Deloitte was paid $130 million to monitor people on social media and create threat dossiers. Babel Street secured a $100 million contract for AI translation to scan for negative sentiments. And the Japanese conglomerate NEC received $8 million to deploy facial recognition algorithms.
Adding to that facial recognition power, the DHS has also expanded its use of a database from a company called Clearview AI. The number of photos in their facial recognition database, 70 billion. Wow, that is nearly 9 images for every single human being on Earth. It means an agent in the field can identify, research, and track virtually anyone simply by taking their photo and running it through this immense library.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at how it plays out on the ground using Palantir's Elite app. It functions kind of like Google Maps for people. First, an agent inputs a target's name or license plate right into their smartphone. Second, the app instantly cross-references those massive public and private databases we just talked about. Finally, the target is pinpointed as a literal pin on a digital map. This exact sequence was used in Oregon, where agents radioed a white van's plate, matched it on their target list via the app, and immediately pulled the van over to make an arrest without a warrant.
Section 3. Labeled a domestic terrorist. The Miramar-Martinez escalation.
Now, let's zoom in and look at what happens when this surveillance infrastructure turns hyper-local and targets a U.S. citizen. Here's the chronological timeline of events for Miramar Martinez, a 31-year-old teaching assistant from Chicago. Days prior to the main incident, she simply reshared a Facebook post regarding an immigration officer's personal YouTube account. Just one day later, Customs and Border Protection circulated her name and photo to field agents, flagging her as a potential threat. A week later, totally unaware she was under watch, she spotted an unmarked vehicle in her neighborhood and shouted a warning to locals. The two vehicles collided. That very same day, she was shot 5 times by a Border Patrol agent. She survived, but was labeled a domestic terrorist by DHS officials and charged with felony assault.
The government did eventually move to drop its case against Martinez, but a major question remained. How had they tracked her so meticulously? Well, federal investigators had used data from local police, license plate readers, and traffic cameras provided by a company called Flock Safety to retrace her movements in the days leading up to the shooting. Domestic tracking infrastructure, meant just for local traffic, inadvertently provided a perfect granular map of her daily errands and work commute.
The human impact of being caught in this high-tech dragnet is profound. Testifying at a congressional hearing, Martinez stated that while her physical scars would heal, quote, "the mental scars will always be there as a reminder of the time my own government attempted to execute me." It's a stark illustration of the severe, real-world consequences of these surveillance tools.
Section 4. Privacy, Protest, and Law. The Constitutional Clash.
Unsurprisingly, the aggressive use and deployment of these high-tech tools are severely testing the ethical boundaries of privacy and sparking major legal battles. You really have to understand the fundamental divide here, so the crucial point is contrasting these two sides. On one hand, the Department of Homeland Security asserts that their methods strictly follow the U.S. Constitution and are absolutely essential for protecting national security, public safety, and the country's economic strength. On the opposing side, civil rights groups allege severe violations of the First Amendment and the Constitution, pointing directly to warrantless arrests and the intimidation of lawful observers, just like what happened to Liz McClellan.
And this conflict is already resulting in major legal fallout. In that Oregon van arrest we discussed earlier, a federal judge ruled that ICE was casting dragnets over towns and making warrantless arrests using the Elite app without probable cause. The judge ultimately deemed those specific actions, driven by the technology, to be unconstitutional.
Yet, according to former department employees, the capabilities are rapidly expanding while policy limits are actually shrinking. Agencies are utilizing tech like Celebrate to extract deleted photos and texts. They've reactivated contracts with companies like Paragon to hack encrypted apps like WhatsApp and Signal. They're relying on mobile facial recognition tools that have actively misidentified subjects in the field. And all the while, internal memos and policies meant to restrict surveillance use are reportedly being ignored or deleted altogether.
Which leaves us with this critical dilemma. As technology continues to rapidly dissolve the traditional boundaries of privacy, how do we balance the very real needs of national security with the fundamental rights of 300 million citizens currently caught in the digital dragnet? It's a complex, monumental question about the future of citizen surveillance, and one we are all going to have to answer together. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.